Hello everyone, this is Seminar 1 of the Change for Good programme and I'm so delighted that you are here with me today. Just a brief about myself. I've basically been a yo-yo dieter for 35 years until I came up with the programme that you're part of today. And so I lost 3.5 stone, but I have achieved that many times over the past number of years. And the key thing for me is to be able to stop dieting. And this is what I found using these techniques has enabled me to do. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. So long-term weight loss, I believe, is 20% diet and activity and exercise, and 80% mind and behavioural changes. Most diets really just focus on that 20%. And if you've been a yo-yo dieter like me, you probably know so much about dieting that you could probably write a book yourself. So we tend to become obsessed with following a diet and exercise program when we're on that sort of diet mentality. And when it doesn't go to plan, then we can feel a bit like a failure, lower self-esteem, and we tend to eat then to make ourselves feel better. So I believe that long-term weight loss really is definitely more about the mind and behaviour and less about focusing on the foods that we're eating and what menus to focus on next. So let me just see if this will come out of here. So this Change for Good programme is different in that your main focus is going to be on identifying new long-term behaviours that will work for you. And you'll basically have your own individual plan because you're all individuals and you'll all need something slightly different to the next person. Implementation is actually the key. I'm sure you've got lots and lots of information that you've already built up in your portfolio or in your library about dieting. It's actually implementing it that's the key part. And this information may be new, but also the key element is then implementing it. You can include treats if you like, but there's going to be a sustainable rule around these. So, and I'll discuss more of those in a moment. And the aim is that you're not constantly thinking about food and dieting. This should really feel like how a naturally slim person lives and eats. And this is your future. So that's what you should get excited about. So let's tick the 20% box, which is what we do really on this first session. And then I don't talk about food a huge amount for the rest of the programme, but it's important to cover this because I think that if we don't balance out our key weight loss hormones, then weight loss is really quite challenging, and it's really hard to get our mind to work in a supportive way if we're not ticking a great hormone balancing way of eating. So the key three hormones to focus on are insulin, leptin and ghrelin, and I'll mention more about those now. So leptin is produced from our fat cells, our stomach and our muscles, and it decreases hunger. And this is really important because most people find that they're hungry all the time. And what it does, it controls our appetite, our energy and our metabolic rate. So really key things for weight loss or long-term weight loss. And they're the main reasons for food cravings, overeating and obsession with food. So once they're out of balance, then it's hard to lose weight, we're never full, and yes, we're hungry all the time. So ghrelin is produced mainly by the lining of our stomach, and that increases hunger. So that should go up significantly before you should eat, and it should then go down over about a 4-hour period. Most people who are overweight or have a weight issue have what we call a faulty ghrelin gauge, and this is because these hormones are being released into the body, but it doesn't know when to work well with leptin, so they should work very much in tandem. And if they're not, if ghrelin is not working well, then it will encourage storage of fat near the liver around the waist. So leptin and ghrelin then, if they're out of balance, your ability to lose weight is nearly impossible because it's very difficult to fight a strong urge to eat. And problem foods for leptin include those that include fructose found in fruit and other carbohydrates. And I'll mention more about fructose in a moment. So let's just take you back to what you did in school and the food to energy cycle. I'm sure you know this, but it's worth a bit of a reminder. So when the food that you eat is broken down in the body, it breaks down into glucose. And at that stage, insulin is released into the body to use that glucose or get that glucose into your cells. You either then use that glucose up, that energy, by running around the block or doing some activity, or if it's not used up, then it's stored either in short-term storage, which is in your liver and your muscles, and that's stored as glycogen, or any excess glucose is then stored as fat. And the first place it will be put is close to the liver, so around your middle. Leptin and ghrelin then, they're key to weight loss and to appetite. And if they're out of balance, your ability to lose weight is nearly impossible because it's very difficult to fight a strong urge to eat. But when they're working well, weight slowly returns to normal range and stays there. So let's see how we balance leptin and ghrelin. Firstly, we have to reduce starchy carbohydrates. So that's the bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, those sort of things. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. Reduce low nutrient foods, so things like fizzy drinks, refined flours, sweets, chocolates, any form of sugar, even including things like honey, which I know are good for you in another way. Reduce fructose, and fructose is not just in fruit, and I'll explain about that in a moment in your pack. And then only to eat every 4 to 6 hours, because that puts you in a fat burning mode rather than fat storing mode, which it is if you eat on and off and graze throughout the day. Stop snacking. I think this is really essential, and if there's anything I've learnt, it's to basically stop snacking. I used to snack all the time on fruit thinking I was being good, and actually it wasn't helping my my possibility to stay at a reasonably level weight, which is what we want for all of us. And then leaving 12 hours between dinner and breakfast so that we're not grazing right up to when we go to bed, and as soon as we wake up we're not eating again. We need to leave at least 12 hours, and I think possibly sometimes a little bit more. So let's look at the blood glucose roller coaster ride that we can be on if we were not balancing out insulin. So let's say, for example, in the morning you wake up and you have let's say a bowl of cereal, some skimmed milk, a chopped banana on top, and a black coffee, which is a typical sort of dieter's breakfast. The challenge with that is there's quite a lot of carbohydrates in it. There's carbohydrates in the cereal, there's carbohydrates in the milk, particularly because it's low fat and there's no fat in it, and there's carbohydrates in the banana, and there's a stimulant in the coffee because that also raises your blood sugar. So what that would cause is actually a blood sugar high first thing in the morning, and that's basically means that if you've got high blood sugar then or blood glucose, then what the body will do will release a high amount of insulin, and insulin is the fat storing hormone. So high insulin means you're storing fat or encouraging fat storage first thing after that sort of healthy type breakfast. And then, unfortunately, if you have a high in the roller coaster ride, it acts just like a roller coaster ride. You get a low, and at that low, probably mid-morning, about 11 o'clock, then you'd have cravings for anything that will raise your blood glucose. So that could be a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, it could be a biscuit, it could be a piece of toast, it could be anything. carbohydrate wise that will raise it. Obviously sweets, chocolates, things like that would do the same too. And then you'll be up high again, encouraging more insulin to be released and more fat storage. And this can continue throughout the day. By the end of the day, you'll feel absolutely exhausted. You would have experienced lots of cravings through the day, lots of highs and lows, lots of dips in energy, and encouraged lots of fat storage. So we don't want you to be doing that. So how to balance insulin? You must eat breakfast with protein. If you're going to have breakfast, or your first meal of the day must include some kind of protein. So with your breakfast, for example, how you could have tweaked that, you probably would have been better choosing a low sugar type breakfast cereal, and then added to it probably more fat or more protein. So something like semi-skim milk or coconut and almond milk, then something like a couple of tablespoons of flaxseed, ground flaxseed, and skip maybe the banana, which has a little bit more sugar in it, and maybe gone for something like berries with it, which would have been a much better balance. So that would be a better breakfast to have. And I'll give you ideas of what would be good. Avoiding sugar as much as possible, and everyone I see says I don't have much sugar at all, but when we actually calculate it, you'd be surprised how much sugar we can actually eat without thinking about it. Avoiding low fat foods. Not only do I think this is good from a mental point of view, in that the more you eat low fat foods, the more the brain thinks that you're on a diet. So if you look in my fridge, you should look in my fridge and think there's no way that anyone is ever that bothered about foods or dieting or their weight, and that's what I want for you. So avoiding low fat foods. Generally they have added sugar or they have added sweeteners, and I don't want you to be eating those. So they're high in the fructose chart, which we'll be looking at in a moment. Then boost your good fats. So we want oily fish, nuts and seeds, avocados, olives, olive oil, flaxseed I've also mentioned, and they will stop you craving fat like crisps and chocolates. So include as many of those as possible in your daily diet. And then reduce caffeine. If you're going to have it with food or have it with some kind of protein, so that you're not having it on its own, because it will be stimulating your blood sugar, raising it and encouraging more insulin release into the body. Okay, so now fructose. In your pack you'll see your chart, and it's got it's like a traffic light system: green, amber and red. So ideally what we want you to do is to steer into the green column as much as you can during the day, because fructose, if you eat too much of it, you'll crave lots more. So you'll crave more carbohydrates and more sugar, more sweets and things like that. They encourage storage of fat, they increase weight, wreck your metabolism, and really it's very, very addictive. And if it's that addictive, it means then that you feel never full and you're hungry all the time. So reducing fructose is a really good way to make yourself feel better. So no calorie countings. I want you to work out how big your stomach size is. So if you do this as shown in the picture with your hand, clenching your hands together like this, that's the size of your stomach. So as you can see, it's not massive. And if you're putting more on your plate than actually that fill, then you're encouraging fat storage too. And what we want to do is to get back in tune with your body, so that when you're in tune with your body, you then work with your body and you work with your stomach size, and you basically feel that you're just it's becoming more natural, and that the portion size is much better and much more in line with what the body needs. Now let's go. Just an easy plate format. I'm sure you've seen this before, but it's It's a good way to get all of the nutrients into your diet, to balance out how much you're eating, reducing the starchy carbohydrates and vegetables to a quarter of a plate, and protein about a quarter of a plate or slightly more, maybe a third of a plate would work. And then lots of non-starchy vegetables, which are the ones in the green section of your fructose chart. I want you to keep an eye on sugar. So added sugar, this is what I want to maximum of 6 teaspoons for women and 9 teaspoons for men. Now everyone says I don't have that much. I don't add sugar to anything. So what I'll be doing is showing you how easy that is. So the average adult consumes about 22 teaspoons of added sugar a day. What I want you to do is to go through your cupboards of the foods that you eat, and before you have anything, I want you to check out how much sugar is included in that food. So this can be in drinks and foods that you like. So anything in a packet will have this on. So you go down to the carbohydrate and then you go of which sugars, and it shows you for the portion that you're having. So for example, this drink here has 70 grams of sugar, and that 70 grams of sugar, then what you do is divide that by 4, and that is then how many teaspoons of sugar are actually included in this drink. So can you believe 17 and a half teaspoons of sugar in this particular drink? So what we want to do is to make sure you're not having too much. So drinks, then we want you to start to cut down on caffeine. So let's just move on a little bit now. Having ticked that 20%, we now want to focus more on how the mind, and I'm just going to go through a few things that I think will really help you. So we need to use the power of our subconscious mind and train our minds to want food for energy and alcohol for occasional relaxation. So those that really start to focus on wanting food just for energy rather than pure pleasure really do well on this program, because we enjoy eating, of course, but actually we enjoy the social occasion more than just the food. So it enables us to feel less emotional about foods. And it's your mind's job to protect you and to make you feel safe and happy. So that's what it's constantly trying to do. It's constantly trying to protect you and make you feel safe and happy. And that's why it will encourage you to do things that produce feel-good hormones. And in the past, you would have linked feel-good hormones with some kind of food and drink. And that's why it's constantly taking you back to that time. But reliance increases, and if you need to consume, and then you just need to consume more to get the same feeling. So this is why people become alcoholics, for example, because they need to consume more and more and more to get the same feeling from those feel-good hormones. So it's about having a balance now, so that we view those foods and drinks in a slightly different way. So going through this. So your hypnosis recordings are really key, and what I've done is I've just included 2 recordings with this session. There will be more and they'll follow regularly, so you'll have at least 6 recordings over the 6 sessions that we have together. Your hypnosis recordings really are key, because what's happening is that they are working with your subconscious mind rather than your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is only about 10% of your mind, and that tries to use willpower and critical thinking and all those things that we've tried to use to make our weight loss a success. But it's really very challenging just using 10% of your mind. So it's much better that we use the 90%, which is the subconscious and the unconscious mind, where beliefs, emotions, habits, values, protective reactions, long-term memory, imagination, intuition are all dealt with. And so if you use your hypnosis recordings, you'll increase your success, you'll increase your strength, you'll increase your determination, you'll reduce your negative habits, and it just works. So please don't just assume you can listen once. What I want you to do is think about how regularly you can actually listen to some of the recordings. So the recordings this time are one to overcome cravings, and the other one is to overcome any alcohol issues that you may have, so that you become more in control of alcohol. So these two are really key to your basic changing your mind process. Times to listen to these recordings are basically either as going off to sleep or on awakening, which is when you go into alpha theta brainwaves, which is when you're very suggestible and able to accept these suggestions the best. But you can also listen to it when relaxing. I've got lots of people who listen to it when they're sewing, for example, or when they're doing embroidery, or even when they're cooking. So you just have to ignore some of the start of the recording, which says close your eyes, that sort of thing, and then just focus on just taking in the subliminal messages whilst you're relaxing. As I said, that's when you're in alpha theta brainwaves, and that's really because it's so important that you get into those brainwaves when you want to make change, rather than trying to do it with your conscious mind, because that doesn't work long term. Those who do this succeed, so please just do it. So your 6-week goal, I've asked you to write down your goal, and I want you to read it daily or as often as you can, because this builds belief and desire and makes things start to happen. And your subconscious mind is just so simple. It will make your goal happen if you're specific enough and keep repeating it. So just, write it down and keep doing it. It's important to say that you have written it down. Some people say they've put it on their computer, they've typed it up, but they've never actually written it out. I prefer to have something that's either handwritten or maybe something that's on your computer, but you've printed it out and you've signed it, so that there's some commitment and accountability to it. If you don't write it out or read it regularly, then basically the mind's going to take you back to your old behaviour and where it thinks you're happy. So, your reasons really must motivate you and sparkle to attract you. So just focus on what really would make the difference this time and why you really want to lose the weight long term. And then please make one of these your weekly goals, because I want you to look at this regularly. I've actually got my goals in my office, and I look at it over my laptop every day as I'm working, so it's constantly in my mind. I've also given you what we call a weekly goal tick list, and this is powerful, it's but simple, and it's very effective part of the program, and it builds belief again, and belief is such a huge part of this. It builds momentum, it builds determination, and it identifies behaviour goals to achieve every day or every week, and this will make a huge change for you. I want you to include in that reading your goal and also listening to your hypnosis. So, but you have an option of going up to 6 daily goals that you just tick. And I want you to tick them as often as you do them, because if you can get 6 things and 6 ticks a day, and you do that for a week, I promise you'll start to make changes really easily, because the mind likes repetition, it likes that momentum. So 6 ticks ideally, 6 ticks every day over the next week, and then we'll do this over the following week, and you just change those 6 goals. Now I want you to snap out of cravings. So we're going to use 2 techniques here which I love, and I want you to use these 2. So the first one is that we need to break the link between the craving and the habit. The shorter time thinking about food, the more quickly you change your habit. and it moves your mind from pleasure to pain and stops the desire. So it's such an easy way to do this. So as soon as you consciously are aware of a thought or a craving, I want you to snap a band around your wrist and say, stop, I'm satisfied, I'm okay. I promise you this works. It's used regularly in psychology to break habits and to break emotional issues. So if you've got long hair, then you can always put one of those hair bubble things around your wrist, but it needs to be a sharp snap on your wrist as soon as you become aware of a thought or something that is causing some kind of craving. Other technique which I love is emotional stress release, and this is again so simple and many people question it, but it's absolutely magical for emotional eating and overcoming stress, overcoming cravings, overcoming anything that is emotional and needs to have your handle on it. You can gain immediate relief and it can be permanent. So please do this. It's a really important technique to do. Emotional stress release, or ESR. So what you need to do is to focus on one issue at a time. Let's say, for example, you really want a biscuit. So you focus on that biscuit, you focus on it and focus on it and focus on it. You scale that desire on a 0 to 10 scale and you say, okay, it's about an 8. And then what I want you to do is to put your fingers with a very, very light touch to your forehead. So halfway between your eyebrows and your hairline. And I want you then to have a very light touch, but to push your fingers up about 2 millimeters, if that, up towards your hairline with a really, really, really light touch. And I just want you to focus on that one issue. So for example, if you're doing it now and it's that biscuit, you focus literally with your fingers in that position and you say, I know I've been focusing on having a biscuit, but I feel calm and relaxed. I'm calm and relaxed. I'm calm and relaxed. That desire, that need for a biscuit is just drifting away. I'm calm and relaxed. I'm comfortable. I'm okay. I'm calm, I'm relaxed, I'm comfortable. I'm okay. And it's magic. And the longer you focus on that problem, the harder it gets to do so. So then if you think on a 0 to 10 scale, after a couple of minutes, you'll probably get down to about a 3 out of 10 or maybe even nothing, 0. And it's really, really powerful. So that's a very simple way of using it, but it can be used for very stressful events or any anxiety or worries or concerns, which could perhaps trigger some emotional eating. So about 1 to 2 minutes, I've said, and those emotions, stresses, cravings will just drift away. So that's now your action for this week is to write your goal sheet if you haven't already done so, to write your weekly tick list goal sheet, and then to listen to your recording and to focus really on the food, to no snacking. Look through all your folders, add more protein into that first meal of the day, and to aim to be on the green section of the fructose chart. And then focus on going for periods of time without eating, so that 4 to 6 hours without food, and 12 hours between dinner and breakfast. And then keep in regular contact with me and the group, and we'll take this to the next stage next time I see you. Thank you for listening. See you soon.